Welcome to the Canarian International Meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Mossy, and I am an alcoholic.
And my name is Mick, and I'm also serving as a secretary today.
You're an alcoholic as well, Mick, here?
Yeah, just for today.
Could you join me in a moment's silence to remember the still suffering alcoholic both inside and outside this meeting? Nadia, where are you? There you are. Nadia, you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you, Mossy. Good evening. My name is Nadia, and I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other. They may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. AA has no dues or fees. It is not allied with any sect, denominations, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help others, alcoholics, to achieve sobriety. Thank you for letting me do service.
Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, Nadia.
A very warm welcome goes out to any newcomer or anyone returning to Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yearly anniversaries. In this meeting, we celebrate birthdays. If you're celebrating this week, just let either myself or Mick know. The chat is now disabled until the end of the meeting, except for the meeting hosts. If you feel our security is at risk at any time, please private message one of the co-hosts so they can check it out. And at that, guys, we're going to hand it over to our speaker today, TRICI. Did I say that right this time?
You sure did. Thank you.
Thank you. TRICI is after celebrating 50 years of sobriety. So she outranks Mick the Ferret. Thanks be to God there's somebody that does. And you're very welcome, TRICI. And you speak for as long as you like. We'll sit here and listen to you. Thanks a million.
Thank you. You'll never get that time. Never, never. My name is indeed TRICI Venola, and I am an alcoholic and an addict. And I am 50 years sober. I got sober when I was 23, and I just turned 74. So save you the math. And the times we live in, my God, how many countries are here? And I love how AA just kind of rolls along. We all adapted to Zoom immediately. And we all got through, that time. I have many friends who came in during the pandemic, during Zoom, and had never been to face-to-face meetings until we started them again here in Istanbul. But I never thought that I would wind up in such an exotic place. I was born in Los Angeles in 1950, and I grew up in a gay colony because my grandmother would not rent to women, and that's who was around that were good tenants. So we had all these gay couples on the property, and it was during the McCarthy era. And I thought I had a dull childhood, but I had a very safe one. I thought it was dull because everything about me I thought was dull and inferior. And I don't know where I got this. I cannot blame my parents. They were supportive, creative, loving, and wonderful. And my siblings were fine. I had two sisters and a younger brother. And when I was 3 years old, the whole family used to sit around and watch me draw. I was a prodigy. And I think I had a great deal of talent. I'm not a genius, but I was very talented at a young age. And there was all this support. And as I got older, we weren't a drinking family. My parents drank beer, but there wasn't, my grandmother was an alcoholic. I thought an alcoholic was a woman in a pillbox hat that drank Christian Brothers brandy in a dim room, in the house down below us. We lived next door to her. And that was an alcoholic. And I didn't ever put it together with, when I grew up and became a hippie, I never put together with, the way I was with drugs. I loved drugs. I never did heroin. I was a weed, speed, and acid head. And my mother and father were, well, not my dad so much. My mother was Christian Science. And, you know, Christian Science is about everything is in your mind. And if you know the truth will make you free. And that's all very true, but it never did diddly squat about my alcoholism. I got to tell you that. So I began to feel very, very sad and peculiar when I was 12 for no reason at all. I didn't like doing homework when I was 13. I had to start doing homework in school and I really resented it. And I thought, I now know that I was depressed, but there was no reason for me to be depressed. There wasn't any outside, anything. And when I was home with my family and felt safe, I was very funny and witty. But in school, I couldn't understand what the other kids were talking about. It's like they all got a manual and I didn't get it. And I had been a straight A student in private school, but when I went into public school, I would sit in junior high and there was this knot of girls over near me and they were the cool girls in school. And you know how you are in junior high, you know, you really want to belong. And I would sit there with a book in front of me because I was a compulsive reader. And I would listen to what they were saying until I learned their language. And they were talking about the Beatles, which I thought was a baseball team. And I didn't know anything, you know. And I thought if I just got a transistor radio, I would know what was going on. And somebody paid me to do an art job when I was 13. And I bought a transistor radio. And I thought, now I will have the key. I will know what everyone is thinking about and talking about. But it didn't happen. So I eventually got pretty and I got a really spectacular body kind of out of nowhere. And I used to hide behind that. When I was 15, I would just sit there like a dope with my cleavage, you know, and just hide behind this pretty facade. And I later did a lot of art pieces about this. And at my shows, every beautiful girl would be standing in front of the one piece, you know, about, I called it Send in the Clown, you know, this facade of the beautiful girl. And behind it is this terrified, you know, shaking, feeling ugly, awful, you know, feeling person, you know, naked and afraid. And I didn't find alcohol until I was about 17. And the first time I drank Jack Daniel's 101 proof and got absolutely stinking. And a guy that I knew carried me. He knew my parents. My parents were the people that gave the parties. And he carried me back from summer theater and over his shoulder. And I woke up on my bed with my clothes kind of folded at the bottom and my shoes next to it, and you know, some of my clothes still on. And he had just been a gentleman and left me there, and I didn't remember anything. He told me about it, and that was the very first drink I ever had, and I loved it. But I didn't love it as much as marijuana, and marijuana was fun, but then came LSD. And since I had been so maladjusted and strange in junior high, my parents were thrilled when I started giving parties for everybody at my junior college, and they'd come over and hang out. There was nothing to do in our little suburb of Los Angeles, you know, which is where white people went to have kids, La Crescenta up in the foothills, you know. There was nothing at all to do for young people. So everybody would come over to my house, and we would, the rule was you had to bring your booze with you when you came, and you had to take your empties with you when you went, because my parents believed that we were not drinking. I don't know how they believed that, but I think they wanted to believe that. But we were all getting shit-faced, you know, and all up and down the street, you could hear crash, clink, as people were throwing their booze bottles into other people's trash cans, you know. And I turned on to LSD. And I had an experience I ran away from home to move in with my boyfriend because we were having sex. And I was in that generation where you're supposed to be a virgin and you're supposed to be sweet and innocent until marriage. And we just weren't about that. Not in the 60s, you know, at least, no. So I fell in love with a guy in high school and ran away. And it was like the song She's Leaving Home, the Beatles. And I am mortified when I remember my mother said, your father stood there at the window and cried. And I had not a feeling at all. I didn't have any feeling at all for what I was doing to my parents. And I really loved them, but I had tamped my feelings down so hard that I couldn't feel anything unless I took something. If I took LSD, I became alive. I became enthusiastic. I wasn't lazy or scared. I was like a 3-year-old dancing in the sun, and I wanted to do everything, and I wanted to paint and draw and be. And this was great, but it did not last. And gradually,
I'll be at a meeting and I'd go.
Hi, somebody's not muted. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. How long do I talk for? Tell me, please. I forgot.
45 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever.
Oh, okay. Well, just give me a warning when I've gone on long enough, please, because I get all wrapped up in it. But it says 2013. When should I stop? Can you tell me? When?
About 10 to.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yep.
Okay, so anyway, I took LSD and I smoked dope to feel. And I drank because I'm an alcoholic. I didn't even much like it. But toward the end there, my boyfriend's friends did not like me and they held black masses against me. I think they were threatened. There was a lot of craziness going on. But essentially, I was devastated because these people that I really wanted to like me did not. And they did stuff that I finally got some psychiatric help from it. But it's the thing, you've got a story like this, I'm sure we all do. And if you tell it to anybody in detail, the hair on the back of their neck stands up and it's like really creepy, you know, it's like, awful stuff. And so I wound up getting into a whole lot of trouble. My boyfriend went to prison for a robbery that was like an acid prank. He stole $250,000 in gems from Forest Lawn Cemetery and got away with it in broad daylight. And it was in the LA Times, and I lost a baby, and it was just a mess. And so I went home, and I really, really loved this boy, but he broke up with me via the mail and went off and did his time and became a born-again Christian, and, you know, sayonara. And I went home and I took I used to drink half a gallon of really cheap wine every night and watch movies just to dull the pain, because I was just longing. I was longing for all of the excitement and passion and, you know, everything that I had felt for such a short time. And eventually I, quote, got over it. I succeeded in completely flattening every emotion I had. And I believe that what those young men did to me mentally was that I got sober 10 years earlier than I would have. I would always have been an alcoholic. I think we're born. I don't think we do it to ourselves. We can make it worse. But it just accelerated my alcoholism. And so I wound up, I flipped out at a rock concert in 1972 and decided to turn myself into the police because I knew I was going to die if I stayed in the place I was living. The boyfriend was in prison. Another boyfriend had come and gone. We had had a nice time, and he said, "You are crazy. I'm giving you back to your mother." And so I, all this time I was creating art. I had talent dripping off of me in great gobbets, and I I could draw anything, I could write, I could do all of these things, but because it was given to me, I was born with it. I never had to work for it. I just kicked it to the curb like everything else that was given to me. Took it completely for granted. I just thought, well, you know, I'll be successful and I don't have to do anything because I'm talented. And it was a rude shock to find out that the world did not agree. But people, I mean, people began to want to pay me to make art. And I kind of did it, but I couldn't finish anything. And then I started taking speed. And if you take speed, oh God, I couldn't make a decision. It's like, what medium do you use? I had all of these visions and I wanted to share them and I'd be so loaded, you know, and I would think, I've got to paint, I've got to draw, and then I would think, well, there's the X-Acto knife, pick it up. And then I would cut myself, try to draw with the blood, and then I would come down. And then I did not want to draw at all. And oh, Jesus. So anyway, I got arrested, got myself arrested. I would never have had the courage to do what I did if I hadn't been loaded on LSD, and I knew it. So I burned every bridge. I got myself arrested, and my one phone call to my mother, she came and got me, and I was in jail way far from my home. And she called every place in the valley and Los Angeles in the middle of the night, and she only found one that answered the phone. And this is before alcoholism was big business, you know. So they took me. I went into this nonprofit, non-funded recovery center, and it was full of heroin addicts. I never did heroin in my life. I was an acid head. And they put my age down as 42. I was 20. I had just turned 22. And I got about 9 months there. And I thought, if this is what sobriety is, I would just as soon go out in a psychedelic blaze of glory. Thank you very much. Anything that was creative. This is Narcotics Anonymous recovery house, heroin addicts in the Valley in 1972. Now, I have the greatest respect for Narcotics Anonymous, and it's a fabulous program. And they only started it because a lot of alcoholics could not relate to people that were taking drugs. But it's all addiction, you know. You can't drink in Narcotics Anonymous, and you can't shoot heroin in AA. So there we are. But they took us to AA meetings in that place. And there was one meeting where I heard a guy say, alcohol wasn't my problem. Alcohol is my solution. Living is my problem. And I thought, oh my God, there's intelligent life in this universe. Because everybody else was kind of saying, you know, I mean, earlier before the meeting, we were saying we are not a glum lot. It was like, give up your underground comics, your rock and roll music, your creative madness, give all that up, and we'll turn you into a nice taxpayer. And then you can live another 60 years that way. And it just seemed like a bum deal to me. And you know, they'd say, and here's our speaker. And, you know, this quivering lady would get up and she'd say, my name is Mildred, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'd think, oh God, get me out of here. But I got to know some of these babes, and they were amazing. There was Alabama Carruthers, and she said, I was a winette. And that was Flo D. She said, I was a winette. It sounded like a girl group, Flo D and the Winettes. And anyway, I left the recovery center. I tried to make it for a year on the street as a functioning alcoholic. I got a job, and I got a car and wrecked them both, and my face. And I had broken my nose, and my parents refused to fix it. It's still crooked. And I had totaled my car, and they were going to put me in jail probably. And I was back at home. And one day and you know, if you're going to be cool in LA, you better be pretty or you better have wheels. And I had neither. So I just put my head down on my mother's kitchen table and wept. And she said, I met a man who can get you out of trouble. And I said, is he good looking? Because you're drowning, but you want a pink lifeboat, you want a good life. No, I want that luxury liner. I don't want the lifeboat. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, my mother had become very wise, and she said, yes, he's very good looking. Everybody down at my college center was making a fuss over him, and I said, well, who is he? And she said, he's the public information director for Los Angeles Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went, oh, Mom, I tried AA and it's awful and it didn't work. And she said, well, he said that he has a different way of doing things, and if you go down and talk to him, he'll help you get out of trouble. And I said, oh, okay. So I went down and talked to him, and I wound up in the Pacific group. Oh my God. But it turned out the Pacific group, they used to call it AA boot camp. You go to a meeting every night, you get 25 phone numbers, and you call them all, and you always say, you act as if it was, the whole point of it was action comes first and feeling follows. But I was so desperate and so helpless. Art, his name was Art, my sponsor. He said, I'll sponsor you until you find a woman. And he came up to my parents' house and sat in their living room, and then he put me in his car and he drove me down and put me in a hotel across from the Pacific group, which met in a little clubhouse. And he paid the rent at the hotel, and everybody told him he was crazy. It took me a long time to pay him back. But I just started, he said, you have no past. You have, and I started going to meetings. I was in a completely different milieu. He said, you have to change everything in your life, and don't think, be like an egg or a rock. You do not have to perform. I was quite colorful. I always had to, and no drawing, no nothing. Just go to meetings. And he said, oh, and you have to get a job. And I did. I don't know how I did it, but I found a dumb job, and I was just like an empty shell. And he said, now we will fill you up. Also, I watched my obsessive nature bounce from my drug dealer, Terry, who I had been obsessed with, to my AA sponsor, who was this big, powerful man. And I watched it happen. It took 3 weeks, and I got into a raving obsession for my sponsor. And I decided I would get him into bed. Now, the only way to impress him was to work the steps. So I had to pretend to work the steps to get him into bed so he would take care of me and I wouldn't ever have to work the steps again. And I'm here to tell you that the steps don't care why you work them. They just work. I got sober despite my rotten motives and my bad intentions. I stayed sober, and I began to recover. And I did eventually, have a little fling with him. But I'm really glad that, God knows what God is doing. And I felt like I couldn't be new. I had to be like 35 years old and 25 years sober. And I was very not doer, but very serious, when I was new. And then Art moved out of town. He told me he didn't even want to be my friend. And I was like clinging to his leg, don't leave, And he moved out of town, and I went to the only woman I had ever seen him really kowtow to, and she was my second sponsor, and her name was Lou Ann, and she was amazing. And there followed a long period of my first 10 years. I sponsored women, a lot of women. I got engaged to 2 guys at once for 2.5 years, and I was living with one and seeing both of them. That's the euphemism, seeing both of them. And everybody in AA knew it because nobody could keep a secret. And I could not make these 2 guys turn into one person. I really tried, and I became very manipulative. And we get better at everything in AA. It's not about necessarily getting good, but you just get better at what you do. I was also not really doing anything with the ARC, but I was so distracted with these 2 relationships and juggling them. Anyway, I left both of them, moved in, got my own place when I had 5 years. And one night at a meeting, I was sobbing. And there was a guy with 20 years. His name was Charlie Vick. He's in the big meeting in the sky now. And I said, oh, I used to have a really good program, and now people don't like me. They say you have 2 boyfriends and I can't even get one. You know, and I just feel horrible. I've been awful and I've really hurt these guys and I really feel shitty. And he said, you're working a program. You're on step 6. You are becoming willing to have God remove your defects of character by trying to live by them. And I always remember Charlie Vick because he gave me my program back. If it had not been for that conversation, I might very well have gone out, because the last thing I had said to him was, the last time I felt this bad, I got sober and I don't want to drink. And I mean, it was that bad. I mean, if you've ever just really hated yourself in sobriety, and I'd already I had worked the steps. I had been sponsoring people, and then this double affair came. Anyway, I tried to get one of those guys back, and in order to impress him, I signed up for art school. And it was just like when I got sober and tried to impress my sponsor by pretending to work the steps. I didn't pretend to go to art school. I did go to art school. I called him up and we had a good chat about my having no money. And I called about 8 schools. And I had been so preoccupied that I didn't know there was something called financial aid. But I went to school in sobriety, and I didn't go to many meetings, but I had been to meetings every night, so it didn't matter. And I became an internationally known computer artist in the early days of the Macintosh, not from school. I dropped out of school, and I went to work for a computer magazine, and I wound up marrying the art director. We had a great marriage, and I was right in the middle of the Macintosh revolution. This was a God shot. I all those years that I was so poor and I was struggling so hard in art school, and I had to work. I had to work all the way through school. And hold a job. I never slept, and I was living with a guy, and we didn't want to break up. He was in school, I was in school. We couldn't even break up. We were both so busy. I slept 2 hours a night, but it took everything I had to do it. And it was just like being new in AA. It took everything I had to do it. And there was nothing left over to luxuriate with and say, look at this magnificent thing I'm doing. It was just hit the deadlines, do the work, do the steps, do the homework, do all of that. And I did it for 2 years. And I had been very bitter because I wasn't an overnight success and because I was so poor, but I had no distraction. And in retrospect, those years were a crucible for my talent, because if I had had any money at all, I would have been totally distracted. But somehow that was a big factor in my eventual success as a computer artist. It was pre-internet, but I had magazine articles written about me. I was just very good with the computer, and it was because I think there's an element of AA, of alcoholism, that's OCD, but I was able to just crawl into the computer just like I had crawled into the paper before, and have the patience to do the stuff. And I began to create, just for fun, in addition to all the commercial work, I started creating these weird ass paintings. And people would say, what drugs do you take? And I would say, not anymore. It was a long time ago. But anyway, when I was 25 years sober, I had a fine life. I'd spoken all over AA. I had sponsored, I got to talk about this. When I was 14 years sober, I was smoking 100 cigarettes a day, sitting on the computer and sponsoring 14 women. And my husband was working, and I just lived in this little cage of cigarette smoke and the computer, tiny, tiny, tiny work. And I had a nervous breakdown, and I called 14 women and told them that I was too sick to work with them. I had an Al-Anon moment. Al-Anonism, disease of martyrdom. I was living vicariously through all my sponsees. I was in a marriage. I was sitting home all day doing this tiny, precise work, making money. And they were out there, falling in love and going to school and having all the life. And one of them was dancing for a top rock and roll band all over the world. And another one was getting her doctoral thesis in, something exotic. And it was, all my life had been a search for grandeur. And I didn't feel like I had much grandeur in my life. So I was living it through them. And the phone rang constantly, and I was always on the phone. And I wasn't sleeping, I was working at night. And I flipped out. And so I thought, somebody said, oh, just fire 7 of them or 10 of them or whatever. And I said, no, how would you feel if your sponsor, kept somebody else and canned you? I can't do it. I had to let everybody go. I called every one of them, and they said, we'll wait. And I said, no, you won't. You get other sponsors, and I just need to walk on the beach and shriek, and I didn't drink. And gradually people started calling, and I would talk to anybody as long as they didn't use the S word, the sponsor word. And gradually I started working I've never stopped working with others, but I got mad at AA after 4 years. When I was 18 years sober, I was so mad at AA. Between 14 and I quit smoking. I quit the smoking, and the rage came up. And I said, it ate my 20s and it ate my 30s, and it's not going to get my 40s. The hell with AA. Ugh. But I continued to go to meetings. And because I had been a big speaker and was very positive, people would expect the kingdom, power, and glory talk, and they would call on me last, and I would go, I'm so angry, this has had my youth, and where did it go? And then the last thing I would say was, but if you're new, you may notice that no one has asked me to be quiet, and no one has asked me to leave. And it's okay to feel like this in sobriety. It is okay to feel like that. The main thing is not to act on it. The action is everything. And the action is what takes a feeling. Feelings are not facts. Feelings are feelings. It doesn't become a fact until you act on it. I mean, you can want to murder somebody, but you don't have to make an amends. You don't have to do the time if you don't do the crime. If you don't, and I can also, on the flip side, I can also dream of being Michelangelo, but if I never touch a brush to a canvas, what does it matter? It's not real. So I learned this hardcore in the Pacific Group, and I credit them with that. I've still got it. The action, if I want to feel a certain way, I have to find an action that goes with that feeling and do it. And then it will create the feeling within me. I'm backward. I'm an alcoholic. So I'm kind of backward. Action comes first, feeling follows. Normal people, they want to do something, feel like doing something, and they do it. Not me. I was 3 weeks sober before I even wanted to be here. So, and every major thing in my life has kind of been that way, that, I took the action and then caught up to it with the feeling. So, anyway, I spent 4 years in a state of rage, and I did amazing art, but I didn't drink, and I continued to go to meetings, and I talked to people. I just wasn't gung-ho. And after 4 years, when I was 18, several of my sponsees, former sponsees, were seeing this therapist. And I thought, I will not go to a therapist. I'm the best lay therapist I know. Screw it, but I, it says in the book, we do not hesitate to seek professional help. And so I did. I called her up and I made an appointment, and she was from India, from Delhi, very different. She was really cool and older than me. And I started to describe what happened in college, which was like 20 years, almost 20 years before, 17, 18 years before, when the young men had decided to drive me crazy, because they did it when we were all on LSD. And if I told anybody about it, they said, oh, she's just paranoid. It was a mental a really bad, I don't have time to go into it, but it was concerted and it was deliberate and it was very effective. And she stopped the session and she said, people go into little rubber rooms for what happened to you and they don't come out. And I said, oh, you know, this isn't anything buried. I've done inventories on this and I've talked about it in AA. And I said, it's, you know, I just got sober I just got sober younger than I would have ordinarily. And she said, exactly. You didn't go into a little rubber room. And I thought of, you know, starting the topless AA beach, you know, down in Venice and dancing my ass off at those AA dances and all those wild ass affairs and art school and all the wild paintings and the marriage and going my resentment for AA flew out the window and never returned because I realized what a gift I had been given. And so then we had a very good life. We had always had a good life, my husband and me, and I married an unusual and patient and wonderful man who is not an alcoholic. And we had been married quite a while, and I realized my life was never going to change. I had 25 years, and I had never traveled and never been anywhere. And as I said, you know, on my old website, it said a search for grandeur, you know. Well, I wound up getting taken to Europe by a friend. And my husband was working for the Playboy outfit in LA. And I was traveling Europe. And I fell in love with Europe. And I came back and I couldn't get back. I just couldn't get back. And we had our house in Venice. We had everything. And I was doing big artworks, you know, and all this stuff. And I just couldn't, it was never going to change. I had a midlife crisis, you know, and I stood in the middle of this wonderful life and just went boom and blew it all to hell. And I'm really sorry I did it that way because I really hurt my husband, but he's fine. He remarried. He's fine. I wound up, I went completely berserk in sobriety and didn't, and moved. I wound up in Turkey and I fell on a beach in southern Turkey and tore the bejesus out of my left knee and wound up getting surgery there and got a bone infection and spent the next 2.5 years in and out of hospitals, first in Turkey and then back in LA. And we had sold our home. My husband and I were completely split. And there was, and in AA, people were fleeing, you know, people I'd known for years were just, I called my sponsor, and by now I had another sponsor, Julie C., still my sponsor. And I said, they don't get it. I said, if I met me the way I am now, out there with no net, you know, and I was still living back with the picket fence and the house in Venice and everything and the marriage, I would think that's how I ought to be. I ought to be out there drawing pictures, you know, in this alien land with no language and no net. That's how I ought to be. And she said, well, being in the avant-garde means being out there in front alone. She said, your friends don't want any part of it. What you're doing is so threatening that they don't want to be anywhere near it. And I'm happy to say that I am now in touch with most of those old friends, the ones that are still sober and alive. And it seems that I'm supposed to be here doing what I'm doing and drawing what I'm drawing. I gave up creating the art on the computer. I didn't give it up, but I just, you know, moved. And I started drawing in sketchbooks. Have I got one? Yeah, I do. I've got 37 of these, and I draw by hand. I draw the people here and the history here, and I post it, and I've published a couple of books. And this seems to be what I'm doing with the second half of my life. Because when I came here, I was 54. I had thought that there was no more adventure or exploration to be had. And it was like being new again. When I moved here, I made so many mistakes. Oh, and my keen alcoholic mind told me that if I went to the little meeting that we have and told those people, I have more time than anybody in Turkey. You know, at the time I had 30 years. That was 10 years more than anybody. And if I told them what a train wreck my life was at that point, they would be frightened and they would maybe go out and drink. So this is how the disease traps us. There was no reason not for me not to go to that meeting. What the hell? So they hear that somebody is screwed up in sobriety. You know, what are they going to do? Drink? Well, I don't think so. But this was how the disease attacked me. I didn't want to drink. I just didn't want to go to meetings. So, and the other thing it said was, oh, you're used to those great big meetings in LA, and this one will bore you. You shouldn't go. So for 7 months, I made decisions based on self and wound up broken homeless on the streets of Istanbul. I had spent all my money living in LA when I was recovering from knee surgery, and now I had none left. And a friend, not in AA, but a friend in Kuala Lumpur was taking a vacation, and she flew out and we rented me an apartment. God bless her. And I quickly got a job because somebody sat next to me at a university where I was pleading for a job that I had blown because of my big mouth and because I was not going to meetings. And she saw my work and she recommended me to a children's book publisher. And that's how I started. And since then, I've been here 20 years. And I can't imagine not doing what I am doing. But I go to meetings 3 times a week, easy. And I have ever since I've been here. I never went that long. I'm not one of those old timers that can just drop in once in a while. I know some. They're fine. I can't do that. I live right on the edge. Maybe if you don't live right on the edge, you know, it's okay. But my brain is like a cat, you know, chaos, complete chaos. And I need the reminder of the steps. And when I say I'm crazy, I'm miserable, if it's about how I look, it's pride. And pride is too much. What is pride when it's this is step 6 and 7. What is pride when it's reduced? It's self-respect. How would I act in this circumstance if I had self-respect? Well, the pride says, don't ask a question, you'll look stupid. The self-respect says, I don't want to be stupid, so I'll ask the question. And to hell with how I look. That's the difference. Greed is up here. When it's reduced, it turns into ambition, desire. Nothing wrong with that. Up here is sloth. Sloth, my personal favorite. They're all based on fear. You know, they're all based on I'm a piece of shit, I'm no good, and I will fail. You know, and the sloth is about anything having to do with movement, changing my mind, doing, you know, creating anything at all, and inertia. And remember, I had to find an outside source to get me sober and to get me into art school. I had to find a thing outside myself. Well, that's inertia. So, you know, I am an inert self. So with sloth, if I reduce it, it becomes easy does it. And you do it 20 minutes a day, and that's how you start. And then you do it 40 minutes a day, and then you do it 70 minutes a day. And sometimes you do it and you say, I will not do this thing, but you find you're doing it. That's me. And what are the other ones? Anger. Oh, well, anger. Anger becomes rocket fuel, you know, motivation. If I get angry enough, if I can reduce it down, if I am in anger, I get paralyzed and I'm in a state of rage and I can't do anything, or I get very stiff, you know, and I lose all my creativity. And I also push everything good out of my life. So I'm going to wrap it up here. But a couple of years ago, my other knee went and the left one is completely toast. And the insurance company I had wasn't they were stonewalling me. And I had two giant resentments, huge ones, and they were the worst kind, justifiable, the worst kind. And one of them was dead, and I still hated his guts. So I had to start saying, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. And after 2 months, and it turned out it wasn't just two people I was resenting, it was everything and everyone. I resent the way they're cutting the trees. I resent all those hijabs. I resent this and that. Yeah, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. And it blew off enough of the anger where I was able to say to a friend, I'm considering talking to so-and-so that bought all that art a few years ago because I heard he owned one of the insurance companies. But I've lost his address, and my phone pinged and my friend had sent me the address. And I wrote to this guy and I said, I'm getting a problem. Can you talk to the insurance company? And they wouldn't talk to him. You know, he fixed both my knees. He's probably the wealthiest man in Turkey. He fixed both my knees and they treated me like the valet sultana, 5 days in a private room, a complete knee replacement, and the other one cleaned out. And so I walk. And I must trust that if I keep working my program and changing my perceptions, that I will be taken care of, that I will know what to do. When I am faced with something terrifying, I say, this is going to change your life. And the person you become on the other side of it, she'll figure it out. She'll know what to do because she always has. And it's a big exercise in faith. My life looks precarious, but it isn't. I feel totally solid and safe. And things are really crazy in Turkey right now, and I'm going to have to move. And I had to apply for more benefits from my retirement, but I got them. And it's like, okay, the evidence isn't all in yet, but when it comes, it's going to be okay. And meanwhile, I'm still drawing, I'm still creating. That's what I'm here for. I decided this is what I'm here for. And so it's very satisfying. Today I went to the Grand Bazaar to get my beautiful ring fixed. It's an Afghan ring, and it's got a blessing on it. I can't read it, but I'm sure it's good. And I went to the Grand Bazaar and I talked to everybody, even though I don't speak Turkish. We communicate. And I went down and looked at an old ruin for my posts. I post about the things that are changing in Turkey without being critical. That's quite a challenge. And took pictures and talked to the people down there, and had a beautiful lunch and came home, and am now talking to people all over the world about how we got here. And it's love. This is love. This is love manifested. How we manifest ourselves is the great secret of AA and the great joy. Everybody has something inside, and it will bloom with the program, So that's how we do it. That's how I did it. And I'm so delighted to be here tonight. And thank you so much for listening for so long. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks a million, TRICI. Myself, I've done a lot of LSD. And I was always afraid that I was going to start having flashbacks. Because I left a trail of destruction behind me with my drinking and drugging career. But sobriety and you finished up on it, sobriety has brought so much love into my life. And this meeting has brought so much enlightenment into my life. And some of the people here are actually amazing, I was just looking around the room and
people
I see Marianne there with, and the kids she's involved with, and they have a nickname on me as well. and Mick the Ferret there, and dead boring. I mean, dead boring. I mean, Deb there in The Hague, and Lily, and I've met so many people from this group, and I feel a part of. I've never felt a part of anything, but I feel a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll let the old dinosaur himself say something. Take it away, Mick.
Thanks, Mossy. Thanks very much. TRICI, when I came in, they said to me, your old way of life availed you nothing. And I thought to myself, what are they talking about? I won't have a life if I forget about what I done and where I lived and things like that. But look at this wonderful life I have today by sticking with AA one day at a time, trying to practice, this program, and it's not always easy, but they told me it gets better. It doesn't mean it gets easier. And it doesn't sometimes, but every time I've come out of something that's gone wrong or something that's brought me down, I have grown. And I didn't know that, didn't know how to grow inside, not on the outside. And what a lovely life I have today. People visit me. Nobody wanted to know me at the end of my drinking. People crossed the road away from me because I was unpredictable. Now I'm predictable. They know what I'm thinking before I even think about it, And what I've wondered, it's just so wonderful. So many loving friends. People like to stab you in the back like Mossy all the time, and it's a great laugh. It's a great laugh. Me and Mossy, when he stayed with me, it was great. I took him around and that, and put him in a little pram and pushed him around and that to meet people. and they, everyone loves him. They ask me every time I go to a meeting, where's your little mate? And I'd say, oh, he's in Ireland, he's in Lanzarote, he's in Netherlands and things like that. They want to know. Isn't that wonderful? Two old drunks together and we've got so many friends. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The yellow card. Who you see here?
What you hear here,
When you leave here,
let it stay here.
there you go. We're like two world professionals. So that's it, everyone. Karen or Tracy, would you lead us out with this romantic prayer? Hold on. The promises. Don't forget the promises. And who's on the promises?
Jan.
Jan from Richmond. Where is
you're going to put it on the screen for her.
And I'll put them up.
No, I've got it. Thanks.
Oh, right.
Oh, that's fine if you don't want me to put them up the screen.
She's been under that bed.
Go for it, Jan.
Yeah. Okay. My name's Jan, alcoholic. The AA promises. If we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our old attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Thank you, Jan. And don't let Marianne or Lily know, but I love you, Jan.
And I love you, Jan.
I love her more.
I love her more than the stars in the sky.
Love you, Jan.
Oh, dear. We'll get TRICI to lead us out with the serenity prayer. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you. And after a moment of silence for the alcoholic who still suffers, please join me in the serenity prayer. I'm going to use the we form. God,
God, grant
grant
us the serenity to accept the things we cannot
change.
courage
Courage
to change the things we can, and the wisdom
wisdom to know
know the
the
difference.
Bless you all.
Thy will be done.
Keep
Thanks,
coming
everybody.
back.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Everyone.
Wow,
You know
wow,
you're
wow.
my favorite.
Thank you.
Thank you.